Welcome back to Kilowatt Hour. Today I am joined by two members of the Rebelle Rally team, Team Kilowatt, Emme Hall and Rebecca Donaghe. Unfortunately, the third member of their team, Vivian, the Rivian R1T, was unable to join us, but I've been looking forward to speaking with these two ever since I heard they were participating in the Desert Rally last year. More recently, Emme joined Tanner Faust in Baja with a Volkswagen ID4 for the Nora Mexico 1000 Baja race. Rebecca and Emme, thanks for joining me.
Ryan, thanks so much for having us here. I love what you guys are doing with your channel and just focusing on EVs. And you guys have an awesome name because we are Team Kilowatt. So kilowatts. But this is Emme, and I review cars for Roadshow. We're part of CNET, and I've been lucky enough to be able to kind of use that position to be able to get into some pretty awesome cars like the ID4 and the Rivian for the Rebelle Rally, which was just awesome. But Rebecca here has been with me all 5 years at the Rebelle Rally as my navigator, and she's like the boss of me.
I'm Rebecca Donaghe, and I'm Emme's boss.
Wonderful. So how did you two first meet?
Actually, we share a mutual friend who was Emme's navigator in the Gazelle in Morocco, which is another rally that takes place all over the Sahara Desert. And her navigator was picked for another team that was sponsored, and another navigator that was working with Emme got injured right before the very first Rebelle, and my driver, who was a driver for Lamborghini, booked up her schedule too much to conflict with the first Rebelle, so she dropped out, and that was about a month before the rally. So the rally itself introduced us, but we happened to know each other through her Gazelle navigator, and I kind of met you a little bit before.
Yeah, we'd met
a little bit just because of the Gazelle, because I did the Gazelle too, but we didn't do it in the same year.
Right.
So we kind of missed each other, but then suddenly the rally was like, hey, you guys both lost your partners. Do y'all want to partner up? And we're like,
oh, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. I don't know really who this person is, or if I really like her, or if we're going to be able to spend 14 hours a day in a truck together. I have no idea. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
And the rest is history.
Obviously, I mean, it's a very large commitment, but you guys seem like close friends now. This was just a chance encounter that I was able to get you both on here because you're just hanging out together. But I guess, can you does daily life look like you guys are around each other all the time now, or are you guys getting ready for another race? What's going on?
I mean, not all the time. We're both pretty busy. I mean, Rebecca is a producer and content creator for commercials, and I've always got a car or a trip or something that's going on, but for this month she's staying with me out here in the desert, which is really awesome because we're getting to, well, first of all, she's organizing my life, which is awesome. But we're also going to be able to take a couple of trips out together and do some fun things. So, but yeah, I mean, normally it's like
every few months get to hang out, and we do we take advantage of training opportunities whenever we can, but most of the time it's hanging out.
Yeah, most of the time.
I hear that training opportunities there. So the Rebelle Relay is a pretty serious, annual activity for you both, is it not?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Rebelle Rally, not Rebel Relay, but Rebelle Rally, because it's not a race, it's a rally, right? It's not a competition for speed. It's a competition for navigational accuracy. So really, the navigator is like 75% of the team's success. You definitely need to have a good vehicle, and you need to have a good driver, but if your navigator doesn't know where you're going, like you have no chance of winning. And it's set up so that you have 7 days. What did we average, like 25 checkpoints in a day or something?
Now it is.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of checkpoints. And they're divided into 3 separate categories. So greens are the easiest, and they're marked by a giant green flag. Blues are a little bit harder, and they're marked by either a smaller blue flag or just a blue pole in the ground. And then blacks are the most difficult, and they are not marked at all. So basically what we do is we plot it on the map. We get a latitude and longitude. We plot that point on the map, and we drive to where we think it is. And then Rebecca gets out all her tools and her magnifying glass, and she looks at it and she goes, okay, well, that mountain over there is this on the map, and that mountain over there is this on the map. And then she uses like this magic ruler and plotter and math and stuff. And she says, okay, we need to move 50 meters in that direction.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we're right. And usually you're right. Usually, what's your 2 meters?
2 meters. I've gotten to a point on the planet within 2 meters of it. But I mean, the key is that because there's so many checkpoints, you really have, it's all about strategy, and it is understanding what the vehicle is capable of, what your driver is capable of, what your navigator is capable of, and trying to essentially look at everything based on what you can read from the map, what kind of terrain you're going to encounter, and what your goals are. And every year we try to set goals so that it helps determine those decisions. We're on the middle of nowhere and hungry and tired and overheated. And we can make those decisions like, we have to go for that black. If we're in it for the win, we've got to go for the blacks. Or if we're, running late on time because of a mechanical issue, or we have a flat tire, or I've gotten us lost somehow, or anything, you've got to constantly reevaluate your strategy and your time management so that you don't time out on anything and you make it to your base camp in time and you don't lose big points and change your ranking in an instant.
Yeah. So what that meant when we had the Rivian was that suddenly, like, we have all of those factors that Rebecca just talked about, and now suddenly we have an electric vehicle that we're going to throw into the mix because we really like to do things the hard way. Like, I mean, like we've won one year in a Jeep, and like, I mean, that was pretty easy. Like,
but it was a stock Jeep.
Yeah, it was a stock Jeep
with stock tires. We didn't change anything on it.
Yeah, no lift, no nothing. But like, so suddenly you have this completely crazy unknown, and we just kind of went into it as like, okay, well, this is a giant experiment, and maybe it'll work.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And like, we didn't know if we were going to make it to the base camp every day. We didn't know what that range meant for us because we had a chance to meet the truck once for a few hours before we got in it for essentially 8 days of hoping that we can figure it out enough to make it.
Yeah. And we had an idea of what our range was going to be based on the terrain, but an idea is not a final, confident thing. And also the terrain would change, from checkpoint to checkpoint. So it's like there was only one day where we knew that we were going to have like a full day of dunes. I guess a day and a half. We knew we were going to have a full day of dunes. So we knew that like, okay, that day was going to be hard on the range. But like sometimes, we'd start off on a gravel road and like that's pretty easy for range, but then you might get into some softer sand, not dune sand, but some softer sand, and that's going to take it down. And then you might get into a little bit of rocks, and that's really going to take it down.
Or you have to go over a mountain range.
Right. And then
lose it on the way up, but then regen on the way down, and hopefully you somehow net out in a good place.
Yeah. So, it was, and I just never done that before, and of course with the ICE vehicle, like, you're going to use more gas in the sand and you're going to use more gas going uphill, but it's just the consequences, I think, are bigger in an electric vehicle.
Sure. Yeah, you can have a spare tank, that physically holds multiple gallons, whereas multiple kilowatts are harder to carry around with you.
Right. Yeah. Which in the rally, the teams are not allowed to carry spare fuel, but in the real world, you could. But in the rally, it is like the most challenging thing where they have to manage when we took the roles in crossover class, we also had to worry about fuel and range in that case because it's got a big V12 engine, giant. And we thought, we're going to have to worry about running out of gas. But again, we managed the range and it worked out fine. But the ICE vehicles get to have a fuel truck. We got to have our great big lovely
Power Innovations truck.
Innovations truck to charge us up. So,
and when Rebecca says the rolls, so we took a Rolls-Royce Cullinan the year before and competed and won in the crossover class because, like, why not?
Why not? Are we okay? We're okay to say it.
Yeah.
This will be the first year we're going to repeat with a vehicle. I mean, last year we pioneered the electric designation, the electrified designation. But obviously that was Rivian's number one truck off of their production line, the very first one. And because of COVID, that ended up being the case. They weren't planning on that being the case, but we think, that's pretty ballsy to send out your very first production truck on this kind of rally. But now this year we'll get a chance to actually, with full production, they've had a chance to by then manufacture many and much more testing since then.
Yeah.
And a lot of the data that we managed to generate from last year's rally, they've managed to use and hopefully make some, changes, improvements, whatever. But I mean, that truck was amazing. It didn't matter that it was the first one.
I mean, the only thing was that we had the 105 kilowatt hour battery. Yeah, 105, the middle one.
135. What?
No, it was the middle one.
I don't remember.
I don't know. It was the middle one. But the point is, even that battery was like not fully baked. So we didn't have the full capacity from what it was. So we were definitely at a distinct disadvantage. So I think that this year, if we're able to get the largest battery, there might actually be a few days where we'll be able to do it all in one charge. Because even on that half-baked battery, which I don't mean it the way that sounds, but we average 167 miles on a charge. So like
that's with multiple different terrains.
Yeah, that was over the whole 8 days. It was 167 miles on a charge, which is like, I mean, that's pretty good for going off road. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think in the soft sand, like we're gonna have to charge in the middle of the day. It just takes too much. It takes too much power to get that giant truck moving through that soft sand, but. Hopefully on some of the earlier days in Nevada where the roads are a little bit flatter, that we'll be able. If we go to Nevada, I don't know. The course is different every year. I'm just
secret until the morning of. Every day is secret until the morning of. So.
I'm assuming we're going to Nevada, but I don't know.
Of course. So one question I do want to ask though is how did you first get set up with the Rivian? Obviously, with it being their first vehicle, they're not just giving that to anyone.
Well, I just asked.
Yeah, exactly. Because when we finished. When we went in the Jeep, we were like, okay, we got to do crossover now, and let's do it in something crazy. So then we ended up with Rolls Royce, and then when we finished with the crossover class and we won in the Rolls, we're like, well, how do we top that? So we're like, electric. We got to do electric.
Jiggy.
And there are definitely some, choices out there as far as where things were with some of the, PHEV or other options, but immediately it was like, oh, we've got to do the Rivian. It's like so perfect for, exploring the outdoors. Like their whole focus is so ideal for what we wanted to do with it. Mm-hmm. And so literally it was just Emme,
I went up to them.
Able to ask.
I pitched them at, I pitched them over email. And then
CES, right?
Yeah, I had a very brief meeting. I mean, literally like on the floor at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas in the January. Oh, I guess it was the January before the Rona.
Yeah. Yep.
And I remember like the PR person was, I mean, like they're really busy, right? They were doing all this stuff with their Amazon trucks and everything. And so I'm like, hey, I'm Emme, and we've talked on the email and stuff. And she's like, yeah, okay, we're super interested, really excited about this. I think it's really, really going to be great. Yeah, let's talk after CES. And then I'm like, oh, they don't want to do it, but they did. And they were so great. And they sent our mutual friend, the famous engineer, Ryan Kalb, out with us on the rally. And they sent 2 techs. And the way the rally works is that there are a fleet of mechanics that can help
all the teams.
Fix the vehicle, all teams. So you can't bring your own personal mechanics. So there were these 2 techs from Rivian that they were so excited because they're like, oh, we get to work on a G-Wagon? What? We get to do that. They were so, the Bronco Sport is here? Yeah, let's work on that. So they were super excited to do that. So sometimes like we'd come in, we'd be like, hey, we just like something little thing happened. We just want to make sure. And they're like, yeah, we got to get this Bronco done, But they were just so delightful and so happy to be there. And it's a hard 7 days in the desert, and they were just like nothing but delightful.
But they saw it as literally what it is, a game.
Yeah.
And enjoyed it, and up for anything.
Yeah, for sure.
That's wonderful. And so you mentioned that Rivian it kind of took back some of like the considerations from your adventure last year and are maybe putting it into the vehicles now. Is there anything specifically that you guys, either struggles that you experienced out there or like key things that you identified? Oh, I wish I had more elbow room here or anything like that?
Yes.
Oh, I mean, there was a couple of physical, like just aesthetic stuff that we were like, we love those damn seats. They're so amazing. And there are so many great things about it. But then I was like, God, we need a handle on the passenger side so that it's easier to get in and out. Because I was constantly getting in and out and struggling because there wasn't a handle in the right place, especially when you're at ride height 4.
Yeah, which is like 12 inches of ground clearance or
really
something.
Nice clearance, but it's very difficult for me to get in. I'm smaller. I'm about 5'4", and I'm like, we need a handle. So I told them where to put a handle. So hopefully we got a handle. They said they were going to put a handle.
The Rebecca handle.
But then there were, little fun things, but definitely gave them constant feedback about how it was performing.
Yeah. I did bend a control link by overdriving it when we got to the dunes. I got very excited when we dropped into the dunes, and I knew exactly where our first checkpoint was. And I was like, you don't even need to tell me where to go. I know where it is. And then I went like bombing down this sand highway, which was super whooped out, and I was just traveling too fast. And we bent a control link, and the truck was still movable. We decided to give up some more difficult checkpoints that we knew that the truck would probably struggle with, and just kind of keep it to the flat, easier parts. And then we were able to change it out without any penalties or anything like that. But they said, they're like, none of this is set in stone, and this gives us an idea of like, what we might need to improve upon. So it'll be interesting to see like what those rear control links look like. Cause I mean, like it was bent. It was supposed to be straight, and it was like pretty,
almost 90 degrees.
The whole wheel was like, brr.
But they were saying there weren't production level control links. But I mean, maybe in the future they'll have even a dial or something where you can essentially make it a variable regen rate, so that you can dial it up or dial it down depending on what terrain you're on. Because if you're in whoops and with the one pedal driving, it's really difficult to like ease off when at the same time as you're easing off you're braking. So if you could dial that down, at least that would help, because when the frequency of the whoops change and suddenly you're stapling, you're gonna lawn dart because you're braking and instead of just easing off the throttle. So it's a little that's a little interesting.
Whoops are when the dirt starts doing this. So it's just a result of traffic, right? Every time you hit your rear wheels spit out a little bit more dirt and a little bit more dirt, and so they just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So some whoops are like real small and like easy to cruise through, and some can be like soup where you just like literally you're just doing this. And if you have a long travel kit, then like you can bust through them. And if you've ever watched any videos of like the Baja 1000, like you'll see them where the wheels are doing up and down, up and down, up and down, and the chassis just looks like it's a couch. And yet stock vehicles are not good on whoops because they don't have the travel in general, right? So you really have to be careful and read them. And like the regen stuff would be pretty good. I mean,
it'd be nice to dial it up, dial it down, because when you're on,
we had to choose.
Yeah, I was nervous about it in the sand because, again, you don't want to brake suddenly in the sand. You're going to bury your front wheels or your front tires, and you managed to perfectly kind of balance that, which is kind of crazy because to have that level of finesse, usually you need a lot of practice. You like nailed it.
I'm so good. I can't back that up with fact.
Well, it sounds like the car was surprisingly capable for an early production vehicle, but I guess, was there anything that like you either were surprised or felt limited by, either positive or negative about the Rivian? Because obviously this has traditionally been just an internal combustion engine race. This is a pre-production vehicle. Normally you're racing production vehicles that maybe people have purchased. So is there anything that really surprised you during this journey that was like a clear indicator that Rivian is above and beyond, or still needs to work on this before they reach production?
Well, I mean, just by the nature of it being an EV, like the weight was, at first I felt was going to be kind of an issue. I mean, it weighs like probably 6,000 pounds, and we had another 500 or 600 pounds of gear in the bed. But then I realized, I'm like, well, that's kind of what a Raptor weighs.
Yeah.
Like
the Rolls weighed about that.
Yeah, the Rolls weighed about that.
But it's just the power to weight ratio is incredible.
Yeah, so you don't really have to worry about that. And and it doesn't have, like, there's no solid rear axle, there's no lockers, there's no there's no low gearing, there's nothing like that. But because you have all of that torque, you don't necessarily need all of those things because that torque is available instantly. So you don't need a low gear,
And
right?
you've got 4 motors, one for each wheel.
So
as well as steering.
right.
Like,
So it's really able to keep the power going to, it's not like an open differential where a wheel lifts up and then suddenly all that power is going to that wheel, right? So I mean, granted, we didn't have it on the Rubicon Trail, so it'd be interesting to see like how it really does perform in the rocks where you really would want a rear locker, like on a regular car. But I mean, I never felt like, oh, we can't make that. I never felt that. Now, having said that, like we were pretty conservative in the dunes because of the weight and because it's all about time management and we didn't want to get stuck. And at that point we weren't really in the race for the podium anyway. So it was like,
we were definitely still reeling from a training experience where we went out and practiced in a big Gladiator and got it stuck for about 6 hours or something
hard.
in like 110 degree weather. It was ridiculous, and soft sand, and we just buried it. And so we spent a long time getting it out, and we're like, we don't need to be doing that again with an extra heavy vehicle and stuff. But yeah, to your point, we were trying to make sure that we did well and that we crossed that finish line, because that was the most important thing. But I mean, I the most impressed throughout even just in our practice with the Rivian was that the engineers are constantly reevaluating, perfecting, adjusting. Like they're always looking for the best performance. That was I thought, oh God, they're obsessive. Like, just let us take the vehicle. Like, come on. But it's impressive because you realize they're never going to just like settle like, oh, this is good enough and throw it out there. They will continue to improve. And because this is basically a vehicle that is a giant computer, it can continually improve. So they can, after purchase, you could continue to get updates and things getting more dialed in and more perfected. That was what was impressive. It's just like, holy shit, you wouldn't be getting the vehicle just as is. Good luck. They have a culture of constant improvement, and I was impressed by that. I thought it was great.
Did you receive any software updates while you were out on the rally?
No, they're not allowed to. You're not allowed to do anything while we're out doing that. Yeah. And no, it wasn't a situation that could have happened. But yeah, because that would be a change.
Yeah, that would.
I don't think
They wouldn't allow that.
No, but could they have? Maybe.
Yeah, they could absolutely, because we had
you're in a race, and if they can communicate with the vehicle, then that could totally happen.
We had a little data recorder that was recording everything that was happening, and then if something happened, like I hit something, I hit a whoop really hard, or we heard a noise or something, we had this little mic that we could just record, like, hey, so such and such a thing just happened, and
so because they weren't just looking at the data
and going like, what happened, like we could
context,
describe. But as we were driving through Death Valley at 100 and some odd degrees, and we didn't want to use the HVAC, right, because we're like, no range. Rebecca's heated seats came on, not mine, hers.
It's because
hers came on.
There was a bit of it was not production glass on the screen, and the dust was interacting with it, so we couldn't turn it off. And my cord activated it because it was, and it wouldn't turn off for hours, and it was so hot, and I was basically beet red and just dripping sweat. And I don't like seat heaters anyway to begin with, but of course mine comes on in the middle of 90 plus degree weather.
Oh, it was great. So we're hitting the mic going, I have swamp ass. So funny.
And I forgot that I didn't know that. I just thought it was just the few engineers would hear that, but apparently that went company wide.
Too fun. And what I love about all of this is that Rivian appears to be a very fun centered company. I think the environment isn't overly technical, we need to win this. We're out here to have fun. Is that fair to say?
We want to win this.
Yeah, they do, but they're also they're not focused on being the fastest truck, right? Which is why the Rally is so great because it's not about speed. They're focused on adventure, and with the Adventure Network charging system that's going up, they want to. What is the slogan? Like, try making the world more adventurous for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. Well,
adventurous forever.
Adventurous forever. Yeah, I think their focus is experiential. So it's not about stats, they'll use the hell out of stats. Like they definitely are very technical and very like down to the nitty gritty details. But it's all about how to have the best experience.
Right.
It's being the best truck out there. Best truck. What's their definition of best truck? And it would be the one that allows you to have whatever kind of adventurous experience you want. And I think that's a really cool focus because it seems to drive everything that they've developed so far and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With that, I want to ask you both, like, what do you drive? What are your current adventures? What's supporting your experiences right now? What do you drive on a daily basis?
Oh, I'll be first because mine's really simple because Emmy's got a couple of things that are really cool. I sold my truck right at the beginning of the pandemic because I was waiting for an electric truck. I have a deposit on Rivian. On their launch edition, but currently I'm driving a little 250cc cafe racer motorcycle.
It's so awesome.
Very cool.
So I get a press car every week. So currently I have a Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid in the driveway, which is okay. But in the garage, I have a 2004 Mazda Speed Miata. So it's the one with the factory turbo putting out 7 whole pounds of boost. But then sitting next to it, I have a 2001 lifted Miata with like 10 inches of ground clearance and 27-inch tires, 538 gears in the rear. Like, it's just stupid. It's totally stupid and so much fun. What's been great, his name is Buddy. And what's been great about Buddy is that, I'm not super mechanical, but now I have a vehicle where I can work on it, and I have a garage where I can work on it, and it's not a big deal, like if the wheel is off for a week, So I'm really enjoying having Buddy around. So Buddy and I have been out to a lot of different places. We've got a trip to Moab planned next week. Oh, I gotta ask for time off for that. Got a trip to Moab planned. But we, instead of taking Buddy, because he doesn't have any air conditioning and he tends to run a little hot, we're going to grab a Gladiator Mojave and take that out there. So that'll be fun. So it's kind of like my daily driver is every car, but the ones I actually own are those 2 Miatas. And then I also have a 2-seat 1600 race car for desert endurance races.
Fantastic. It's fun for me hearing that you have 2 Miatas. I used to drive a Toyota MR2 Spider, kind of the yin to the yang. Yep.
The mid-engine version of that.
Exactly. And it's just fun for me that you have 2. You've got one for your daily and one for your adventures. That's great.
Yeah, it's great. It's so great. So I try to make a concerted effort to not drive press cars on the weekend. Sometimes it's hard, like when you have a really nice car and you want to drive it, it's like you have 2 cars in the garage that you should drive. So it's a good problem to have.
Sure. And I want to go back to the electric truck discussion just a little bit. But so obviously the Rivian is one of the most exciting ones coming. There's, the Tesla Cybertruck, there's Bollinger, there's Lordstown. The list goes, actually Lordstown, I think there's actually a conversation we should have there as well. But then there's also the F-150 unveil. What excites you guys about these electric trucks? What are your thoughts about them?
Oh, well, I'm stoked about the F-150. That's a very important vehicle, right? That's America's best-selling vehicle, not even truck, vehicle. And they're throwing us they started with the hybrid, which is pretty good. I've driven it. And now to have a full electric F-150, I think it's going to be great. And it's going to do a lot to maybe spur adoption across some consumers that wouldn't necessarily think about it. I think we're going to see a lot of electric fleets now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that President Biden's really pushing for electrified fleets, which is great. I think we have to do a little bit to our infrastructure before we can really push those things.
But if the market's there,
the infrastructure will follow.
Yes.
Yeah. So
if there's money to be made, there will be companies providing infrastructure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm super stoked. And as battery density gets better and as charging times get quicker, you're going to be able to get off grid in an electric vehicle for longer than you can now. I mean, now you definitely got a plan, and it's not as easy to do it as you can do it in a gas powered vehicle. But As Emily Miller says, the founder of the Rebelle Rally, if it were easy, everyone would do it.
Absolutely. So then I guess this question might be more just for Emme, but could you tell me a little bit about your time with the ID4 and how that happened and what that experience was like, how it was either better or worse or different than your experience at the Rebelle?
Yeah, it was totally different because that was actually a race for speed. We weren't going fast. So Volkswagen, they wanted to take this ID4 to Baja, and I have a pretty good relationship with Volkswagen, and they know that I'm an off-road racer and that we've done the Rivian. So I'm kind of the only journalist that's uniquely situated to be on a trip like that. So they came to me and they're like, hey, we're doing this. I'm like, yes, sign me up. I will go. I got my second COVID shot. Let's get out of here. But what was different about that is that the way that rally is set up. So again, that is a rally, although this one is for speed. It's set up over 5 days and you go in different stages. So it's usually 2 or 3 special stages, which are on the dirt, and then transit stages in between. So you do like a 40-mile special stage, and then maybe you'd have a 9-mile transit stage on the pavement. Or then you do a 150-mile transit or dirt stage, and then you'd have 20 miles on the pavement. It varied every single day. So Volkswagen was really smart in that they realized that they could charge on those transits. And there's nothing in the rules that says that you can't tow your vehicle on those transit stages. So we had a truck and a trailer with a generator, a 50 kilowatt generator, or a generator generating 50 kilowatts. And the ID4 would go in the trailer and they would plug it in, and we would go from special stage, we go on the transit stage. And if we didn't get enough juice during that transit stage, there was usually enough time that you could use some of that time then to fully charge your vehicle. I mean, you definitely couldn't sit on the side of the road for 6 hours charging because stages would open and close. But in general, we had enough time. We were never late for a stage except for once. And that was because the car got stuck.
Which is a whole
different story. But in terms of the logistics for racing an electric vehicle in Baja, this was the best way to do it. And the week before, Lordstown had tried to do the San Felipe 250 and just failed miserably by underestimating the terrain, overestimating their range. I don't think that they pre-ran. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I don't think that they pre-ran. They had a very well prepped vehicle in terms of the off-roading capabilities of the vehicle and the suspension. I mean, that was all done by Brenthal, which is they're a team that knows what they're doing in Baja, but they were not ready, and they should have come down and done the Nora. But as it were, they weren't, and so Volkswagen were the only people there. So all we had to do was get it across the finish line. So we didn't have to go fast, and we couldn't because this was a vehicle, essentially a stock SUV with 7 inches of ground clearance. I mean, yeah, they had upgraded the shocks a little bit, but honestly, the rears blew out the first day, so we had the stock shocks on the rears for the whole rest of the time. It had bigger tires, more aggressive tires, but it's not like it had a 3-inch lift and a long travel kit. It was stock travel. So we were doing 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. There were some places Tanner did get to 107 on the dry lake bed, but I mean, that's a dry lake bed. You can do that, right? Through a lot of the rough stuff, it was pretty slow going. But at the end, the vehicle averaged 1.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which is, it was pretty good. When I was in the car, I could see it go up, and then I could see it go down, and then I could see it go up. We're like, ah! But so 1.6 miles per kilowatt hour ended up being 125 miles on a charge. So there were some stages, special stages that we did have to charge on stage. There was one stage that was 167 miles, so we definitely had to charge on that. But having said that, a lot of the gas vehicles had to refuel on stage, and there's nothing that says that you can't refuel on stage. Volkswagen just did it in a different way. We also had an LS-powered buggy that was following the ID4 in case of problems, mostly. Hang on, we'll get to that. And so that could tow charge as well. So that could, tow the vehicle, and that basically acted like a 20 kilowatt hour charger. So they were able to get some juice on that when they needed it as well. But yeah, in the end, it didn't even finish last. It finished 61st out of 64 finishers. So I thought it was last, and then I looked at the results and go, oh my God, it was 61st.
So this was absolutely pushing a car more to its limits, I would say. The Rivian is built more for what you put it up to versus the ID4. So why do you think that Volkswagen wanted to put it out there and wanted to put it up to that more difficult challenge, I'll say?
Well, Volkswagen has a big history in Baja, right?
Major history. I mean, you also drove another Volkswagen.
Yeah, I took a stock Bug in the Baja 1000, and those stock Bugs are what started off-road racing in Baja, and air-cooled motors and Volkswagen is what started all of that. So Volkswagen just has such a huge history, so it makes sense for them to come down there. And also, like, if your vehicle can get through Baja, it's going to get you to the grocery store. It's kind of one of the very best proving grounds that you could actually get to. So Volkswagen was proving the integrity of the ID4's mechanicals, but also the fact that, people that are new to EVs have range anxiety. Okay, well, we're literally out here in the middle of nowhere in Baja, California, and we're driving an electric vehicle, and we have confidence in that vehicle. So
in an event, you're not allowed to have range anxiety.
Yeah.
That's a luxury.
In my stage, I brought it in with 3.7 miles on the odometer, on the battery, and I was like, oh my God, we're gonna die! But pro tip, even when you get down to 0.0, the car will still go. Just go. It goes for like at least an extra 5 miles after that.
Often that's the case. I know that some cars that actually depletes over time and you lose that buffer. But yes, as you're saying, many of these companies do have a buffer built in.
Yeah.
So I guess the only other question I have on that one is, what was the charging infrastructure like? Did Power Innovations come out with a giant semi-truck full of batteries again, or how did you end up charging it? Was it just tow charging?
No, it was. We had the generator, so we had a big F6050, whatever it was, and a trailer. And so we had a biodiesel generator that was putting power into a 50 kilowatt charger. So that's how we did it. So it was you just loaded it up into the trailer, plugged it in, and drove the transit stage to the next special stage. Yeah, I mean, in the Rebelle we had the big Power Innovations truck, which was essentially the same thing except that our charger was like 125 kilowatt charger. It was fast. So, yeah. It was fast, and the Rivian can accept a pretty fast charge.
Or more than that, actually.
It might have been a 150.
It might have been more. I don't know.
I can't remember, but it was fast. It was faster than 50 kilowatts. But they originally, for the Rebelle, they wanted to use a hydrogen instead of using a generator. And because the rally crosses through like a million different counties, I guess the paperwork...
million different municipalities.
Yeah.
The permitting of it was... because the lead time on that was definitely more than we had given the rally when we were like, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Are you going to figure it out?
So hopefully this next year when we come back, we'll have cleaner power rather than a generator.
But because Power Innovations came on board to provide us and the PHEV vehicle power, they also created basically an entirely green energy base camp situation for the rally. So it was all green.
Yeah. Yeah, we had some
rally,
solar powers, and it was cool.
No fuel burning at base camp. It was great.
Yeah.
What an awesome partnership that is. Because they've been doing it for years a certain way, and partly by you guys being there, introducing a new kind of vecle. There's other externalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rally just took a giant leap forward in innovation. It was great.
Now, just kind of going back to charging for racing. I'm not sure if you know this, but there is a garage-built EV that's been competing in a couple of different races, and it was it's called the Shitbox, because I swear to God, it's an old 4Runner with, I think right now it's got a Leaf motor and EV West batteries. And what they do, because it's built at home, right? What they do is they have, for the 250, they brought a truck and a super long trailer, and they had all of these batteries that they had pre-charged. And then because those batteries are really heavy, they did like a zip line across the length of the trailer. So all they had to do was just hook the batteries to the zip line. And the truck would like kind of back up to the trailer. They'd hook the batteries to the zip line, and then they would like move these batteries down, and they would slide into the bed of the truck, and then they just had like a plug and play thing. So they were able to swap out batteries in like 7 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. I mean, like, not as fast as a gas stop, but pretty darn quick, right? They didn't finish the 250. They got to like 150 some odd miles, 157, something like that. But they're a great team. They're so much fun. And the guy who kind of runs it, his name's Kyle Seglin, and he works for Tesla, and he's like Ryan Kalb, just like totally open to learning and trying to just figure out new and inventive ways to get stuff done, because stock electric vehicles, you can't swap the batteries, right? So they're always going to be at a disadvantage when it comes to racing. People that are going to build their own, you're going to swap batteries. Until you have batteries with this super crazy high density, like swapping batteries is the only way to do it and be competitive.
I hear that, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned before our call, that I've done the Cannonball, and I'm not trying to compete with the true Cannonball. I'm trying to compete in the electric Cannonball.
Right.
Whereas, you have to consider the extra time needed for charging.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely a difference, but at the end of the day, we're proving what's possible, and most people are not pushing the cars to these absolute limits.
Yeah.
In extreme temperatures.
Yeah.
Well, I think you also just gave me a good idea for a potential next guest. I'll have to reach out to him.
Oh, yeah. Yay! Kyle he has this mullet. And he looks like this total, like, redneck dumbass. And then you talk to him and you're like, oh, shit, this guy's, like, really smart. I adore him, and I adore that team. And I really, really hope they succeed, because they're so smart.
And they likely had self-recovery gear on there.
They probably did have self-recovery. They probably did have max tracks. I got to drive 2 stages of the ID4, and on my first stage, we ended up going through some pretty terrible beach sand stuff, and the ID4 does not have the clearance nor the travel to deal with that, and we got stuck. And the idea was that LS buggy was always going to be behind us to help us out. Well, the buggy was having problems of its own,
that's literally thinking
that you're never going to have it. Yeah, and it's never.
Baja doesn't work that way. Yeah.
So that buggy was having overheating problems. So they were God knows how far behind us, and we're stuck. And we have no shovel. We have no max tracks. We have no tow strap. Like, we have nothing. We have no recovery gear.
Baja 101.
Yeah. So Tanner has a pair of flip-flops in the car for after the race. So we're digging with his flip-flops. We're digging in the soft sand with his flip-flops. And there's like these like burrs that are like these giant like inch-long star burrs, right? And they're like getting all in our suits and in our hands. There's a snake. Like, I throw a snake through the... I mean, it was terrible.
I mean, you should always have some type of self-recovery.
And
in the most basic sense, 2 max tracks, and you're in a better position to recover in, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the case, as opposed to waiting for help to come to you.
To come get you,
You've got 2 bodies.
Yeah.
You can get yourself out if you've got the tools. Yeah. And those tools are not heavy.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
So basically, Tanner and I did everything that we could do with the tools that we had. I mean, so we dug with his flip-flops. And then we put rocks underneath the tires, and we aired down as much as we could, as much as we felt safe, because, I mean, that vehicle is like 4,800 pounds, so, you don't want to air down too much. But yeah, you can air down to like 15 and be fine. Wasn't going to happen. So finally the buggy catches up to us, and then they get stuck. So that was cool. Also because the ID4 is rear-wheel drive, by the way. It was not an all-wheel drive vehicle. It was rear-wheel drive. So that was also part of this getting stuck in the sand. And then the official NORA vehicle shows up to recover us, and then they get stuck. So there's 3 vehicles stuck in this, and I'm like, I cannot believe this cluster
and a pair of flip-flops
that is happening right now. So then eventually, and like communication in Baja is really hard, like they're out of radio range, and your phone doesn't work, and they don't have a sat phone for whatever reason, and you're just like, oh. So finally, the chase truck was able to find an access road, like the real chase truck, the big chase truck. They were able to find an access road that was hard pack, and they show up. Not with max tracks, but with cheap Chinese knockoff max tracks. But they were able to get the job done, and oh my God, we self-recovered in like 20 minutes. Instead of being stuck there for an hour and a half. So as a result, we didn't finish that stage, and we did not start the next stage, which really kind of sucked.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to finish the race, but that is very frustrating. I guess the only other question I would have is do you have any knowledge as to why Volkswagen gave the rear-wheel drive? Are they not yet producing the all-wheel drive?
There wasn't an all-wheel drive available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I would think that the obvious decision if you're going out there is to take all-wheel drive.
I don't even know if an all-wheel drive has made it off the production line yet, because I think they're launching with rear-wheel drive. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So
Very cool.
You're just like, okay.
Well, that covers the majority of what I wanted to ask during this interview, but I obviously want to ask, like, is there anything else that you guys are thinking of that, like, stories from either of these experiences or just broadly with your thoughts on electric vehicles that you want to have included? Sounds like there's something.
No, I mean, I've come around on electric vehicles. A lot of times when I would get them for review, I would just be like, and a lot of my problem with that was because I always had to rely on a public charger. And then once my landlord put a home charger in, I was like, electric vehicles are great. I just plug it in at night, right? And I know that that's not something that everyone has the luxury of having, right? Like a lot of people live in apartments, or they live in a house that doesn't have the capacity for a 220 volt watt, whatever, a larger charger. Sorry, electricity is hard. But having said that, like, I feel like if people can have that experience of the ease of just being able to plug it in at night and wake up and have a full charge, that I think that's going to change a lot of people's perceptions, which is why I push so hard for saying, like, yes, but we need the infrastructure, because like EVs are really fun. Instant torque is really fun. And it's a lot of enthusiasts are having, they're so worried about not being able to have their gas-powered vehicle, and it's like, but this is just another way to have fun. I will always love my Miata, 100%. I don't ever want to sell Buddy. But if Mazda comes out with an electric Miata, like I'm there. I'm totally there. Oh my God, could you imagine?
That thing would fly.
It'd be so good.
Like literally actually lift off.
I know, it would. You'd have to put a big wing on the back.
Any closing thoughts from you, Rebecca?
I've been excited about having any kind of electric truck. So the idea that we've got so many that are finally hitting the market. I've had countless arguments with my friends who were early adopters with the Prius and with the Tesla, like, there's not a market for electric trucks. And I'm like, yes, there is. If you that amount of power, all you have to do is make sure that they survive the strength and the ability to tow, and that power is gonna, like, there's so much of a market out there. So I'm so glad that the manufacturers are finally putting out enough so that you're seeing a variety. I love it. I don't find that, like, ooh, this one's the best. I don't want anybody else to be out there. Like, the more we've got, the better the technology will be, the more the R&D, I'm not saying that the tech right now is the end-all be-all. There's so much more that can be improved. And so, but you've got to invest to take those steps. So I'm excited to see a whole variety. I'm really excited about the F-150. That was the truck that I sold. And when I bought it in 2005, I said, I want this, I'm designing this truck so that I can have it for 10 years because I expect there to be a electric truck by 2015. I was wrong. And the dealer laughed at me, but I was only off by five years.
I mean, 6. And I think actually 7 because it's a 2022 model.
Well, but I mean, really, it was, if not for, I didn't predict a worldwide pandemic. It would have been 2020. But yeah, I just think it's exciting to see all of the different variations that are coming out and all the different manufacturers trying to figure out ways to tap into this because the excitement is palpable for everyone.
Yeah, we're definitely turning a corner right now, which is super exciting. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I really appreciate having you guys on this call. Really appreciate your time. And I look forward to hearing more from you as you approach this year's race and as you approach more races with electric vehicles. I can't wait to watch you both, not even just races, rallies as well.
Thanks for your support.
Absolutely.
Bye, Ryan.
Thanks so much.
Thank you
Talk
so
to you
much.
later.